Hello and welcome to episode 29 of the Large Format Photography Podcast. My name is Simon Forster and I'm joined by Andrew Bartram and Dave Shrimpton. Hello, Andrew.
Hi, Simon.
And hello, Dave.
Hello, gentlemen. Very nice to finally be talking to you.
It is, and because we've talked about getting you on the show and going to your place and so on, and it's just because of viruses and Andrew coming back from northern Italy when he shouldn't have been and all of that kind of stuff. Then actually that's not entirely true about Andrew, but he can put some flesh on the bone in a minute. But this is probably part one of an odyssey of Dave Shrimpton, because hopefully when things get back to some kind of normality, then we'll make a visit over to your place and check it out. So
that would be great, guys, and I shall fully intend you both to take wet plate collodion portraits of each other, so be prepared.
Ooh, yes. So on that note, let's head over to the Fens and see what Andrew's been up to.
Well, I've actually finally been out with my camera. I've been taking photographs during this strange period, but there have been a lot of stuff with toy cameras and pinholes and stuff I can do around the house easily. I think during the lockdown period up until last weekend, I'd exposed a couple of sheets of paper negatives down the bottom of the garden just for the heck of it. But it was all like too much effort just to take a picture of a watering can with a large format camera. So, Boris eased the lockdown restriction and suddenly we can travel anywhere in the world as long as we're back in the evening. So I thought, what could possibly be wrong with me heading out into the middle levels? When I said I was going to the middle levels, Christine Pennock said, "Is that near Middle Earth?" I said, "No, it's just kind of out in the Fens." It's to do with the drainage board area, I think. Anyway, so I got my Ordnance Survey maps out, because you've got to use Ordnance Survey paper maps, and I had a rough idea of where I wanted to go, and so I loaded the car. I spent the day before loading the car up and just finding all my stuff, and I'll come on to this business about losing bits and bobs in a minute. But I gathered together my Toyo camera. Got that in the boot of the car. Got my three lenses, my 210 Schneider, my 150, and my 90 Fuji thingy bob. And I had my 617 Dai. Yeah, well, we're getting into this pronunciation thing again. That Chinese back, 6x17 back I've got for my Toyo. And loaded that with, well, I took some chrome slide film out with me and a roll of Fomapan 100. But that wasn't before I took the back off the 617 camera to realise there was already a film in there. So I quickly put the back on again, wound it on once. Didn't know what it was. I guessed at HP5. It turned out to be FP4, but I'd rated it 200, so that was fine. So I headed off into the Fens with a flask of coffees for some prime time Borat Peter Lynn meditative photography.
Borut, please call him.
What did I call him? Borat again?
Borat again.
Sorry. Yes. Anyway, with Borat, I've forgotten. How do you pronounce his name?
I think it's Borut.
Anyway, with the top shit man, I went out into the Fens in like the top shit man does. Only he doesn't go into the Fens, of course. He's in Slovenia, and I ended up stopping at 3 locations and used the 617 back. I used all 3 lenses. I had 6 sheets of FP4 with me, and I photographed a pumping station. I photographed an old barn, and I photographed some a bit of river drainagey, ditchy thing. And it was lovely. The sun was out, but not out really strongly. There was interesting clouds. I wasn't getting that really harsh shadow, because I hate going out with large format gear in really bright sunshine, because it just does nothing for me. I like some clouds. I like the sunshine to be slightly diffused. I think that works really well. I was getting around 4 stops between where I wanted a shadow to be and where I thought the highlights were going to fall. So that was kind of okay. I was going to develop in Pyrocat HD, which I'm still playing with a little bit, but I figured that would be fine. And I was going to use Jeff Perry's 20th Century Camera Reel, which I haven't used in ages. You like that?
It work. They work well. I'm just waiting for another one from Jeff at the moment, the 10x8 version. So, but please, I don't want to crash you.
Well, that's okay. Did you see that one? He posted a video of loading an enormous sheet of film. I don't know how big that sheet of film was.
That was ridiculous.
It was a
like
huge
20-inch sheet of film.
20
with one hand.
Film, with one hand, and he fed it into his 20th Century Reel. So lesson number one: when you haven't, when you're as when you think you know what you're doing, which I do most of the time, and you go to use a bit of kit which you haven't used in a long time, just stop and think about it. So I put these 6 sheets of FP4 in and got them out and looked at the big thick scratch down each bit of emulsion, because I'd loaded them with the emulsion side facing out. Yeah. So I thought, well, what can I learn from this? I actually learned that the Pyro HD worked really well. Well, it looked to work really well. I need to play with them in the enlarger really to see if I need to tweak, because what you can do, the normal development for PyroCat HD is if you're just doing silver paper, normal what Sandy King refers to as blue sensitive paper, then it's 1 part plus 1 part plus 100. But you can make the second part two parts, and that kind of gives your negatives a bit more oomph. Or you can go 2 plus 2 plus 100, and for longer, for alternative type processes. But it all needs a bit of playing around with, really. So I'm sticking with 1 plus 1 plus 100, and the negs looked good, apart from this great big bloody scratch down the middle. But I kept my top shit cool head on and said, well, you know what? I really enjoyed my 3 hours out in the Bedford Middle Levels.
Good for you.
They're called Bedford Middle Levels, but it's nowhere near Bedford. It's near Benwick, if anyone's familiar with the Fens. And I really enjoyed it. And I came back and I felt relaxed. It was very contemplative. It was very meditative. And I liken it to fishing. Not that I know anything about fishing really, but I can imagine if it was me, I'd be sitting there, never catch anything and come home, but quite pleased that I've had the experience. And it was lovely.
Well, funny enough, Andrew, I think that's where I am as well. I'm finding that the process of taking a picture is often far more enjoyable and exciting and interesting for me than the actual end result. That's almost immaterial. I love that contemplation, the looking. And half the thing is it worth taking a picture of, like you with your watering can in the garden, and go out for a shoot and just come back and not taking anything. 9 times out of 10, I have taken something, but that's the joy of just going out with 6 sheets of film, for a whole day, the discipline. So it's that.
Oh, I did have the 617 back, and I did have 3 coffee cans with
good man
with paper in, 3 good of the man. Those Illy cans with the screw lid.
Oh well, I've moved on. I'm on oats at the moment, on the Highland Oats. So
is Highland Oats a better pinhole camera than an Illy coffee?
Seriously, man, it is my best camera. There's Highland. I'm actually, honestly, you have a look at my Instagram. There's a feed there. There's a shot I did of a stream in Dovedale.
I saw you setting that up. You did a picture of yourself setting that up, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. The result from that is just breathtaking. And of course, the beauty of it is as you know, when you've used your McDonald's or other sticks are available, when you've inserted your film, you've got that beautiful curvature. It's a bit like So anyway, I'm totally behind you on that one. Absolutely.
Well, share a picture of that into the Large Format Photography Podcast Facebook group, please, so we can see what you're talking about. So I did get a shot off with one of my Illy cans, and I went to photograph the pumping station with a Fomapan steel film can. Those 100 feet cans that you buy bulk film in.
Oh my God!
I turned one of those into a pinhole camera that takes a strip of film or paper about 8 inches long, and it bends around.
I love those shots. And
it bends around. And so I'd loaded that with when I cut down my X-ray film, I end up with loads of these little thin strips, which I keep. Yeah. So with a bit of fiddling around, I squeezed one of those in to that camera. And I went to get that out. I'd exposed my last sheet of FP4, and I went to get this Foma pinhole camera out. And I was looking for my fancy little magnetic tripod head thing. So I've got this magnet. It's courtesy of Mr. Chris Peregoy of Pinhole Blender, nice. Who sent me a Pinhole Blender camera, which is a discussion for another day and another podcast. But he also sent this magnet, which is about 1.5 inches long, with a 1/4 inch thread in the bottom. So you can screw it on top of in my case, my Manfrotto quick release plate. And then I can put any tin can on top of it, bang, with a magnet. So you could make one of these things. I'm sure you could anyway, Dave.
Yeah, that sounds a brilliant solution. Yeah.
So I went to get my Foma, providing you've got a steel-based pinhole camera and not a wooden box. That clearly wouldn't work with a magnetic tripod mount.
Or a Coca-Cola tin, yeah.
Yeah, if it's got lots of aluminium in. So I went to look for this thing I'd been merrily using an hour before at another location. And I thought, I'm going mad. I had the car in bits. I was looking, I thought it must have just fallen down somewhere. So I abandoned, by this time I'd been out nearly 4 hours. I thought, I've had enough now. I'm going to go back and retrace my steps. And guess what? I found it lying in the grass by this barn I'd been photographed. So I didn't get to use all my pinhole cameras. And I also didn't get to use my Industar 300mm Industar 37 lens that I bought a while back, because I had taken some paper out with me, and I thought I could probably get away with using that with some paper in the fens at f64. Of course, I've got Jason Lane's dry plates sitting in the fridge, but I haven't got the holder yet from the Kickstarter. So I didn't get to use the Industar either. So I'm planning a repeat trip this weekend. I've got my eye on the weather because I don't want to go out when it's just blue skies. And I'm going to retrace my steps, and I'm going to basically take the same pictures I took last weekend and try and do a bit more pinhole, because now I've found my magnetic tripod head thing. And I'm going to use this Industar lens with some paper negatives as well. So it's very exciting. And one more thing. Sorry, I realise I'm really rambling on. If you look in the Facebook group, I posted a picture just a minute ago of my new toy, which has cost me the sum of £10. And bless you, Wayne Stetzer, for being such a wonderful member of our Facebook group and posting those wonderful videos. He posted one from his backyard. Now, if you've seen a picture of Wayne's house and his backyard, he lives like on a castle on a hill with a big balcony, and he stands there with a rifle and shoots intruders, I think. But he stole from his wife's cupboard a hanging shower caddy thing. That's all I can describe it. And he said he uses that to keep all his bits and bobs in, his large format bits and bobs. He may not have used the term bits and bobs, highly doubtful. But anyway, so I went on to Amazon and found one for £10, Amazon Basics. And it folds up, and it opens up, and it's got a little hangy thing on the top. And in there I've now got my filters, four filters of Coke in P things, no fancy Lee stuff. I can't afford those. And I've got my Minolta spot meter, and a loop that I very rarely use because I don't need to, and a Lastalite 30 centimeter pop out grey, well, not really a grey card, is it? A grey target thing that Ben Horn uses in his videos. And I asked Ben where he got it from, and he told me. And all of that fits into this little caddy. And the idea is that you just hang it on your tripod. And it's it's got a bit of weight to it now, and it'll help weight the tripod down. Not that I really need that.
Brilliant.
But most importantly, it's got all those bits that you lose. You end up taking things off, and you put it in a pocket, and then I'm patting all my pockets to find out where things are. Or you drop it on the floor, and
then tread on it, and then tread on it, yeah.
And tread on it, yeah. Yeah. So
the amount of loops I've done that too, yeah. Anyway, sorry, carry on.
I can't quite bring myself, Wayne, if you're listening, to buying one of those. I used to call them photographers' waistcoats or gilets.
Yeah.
Right. I'm sorry, but I am not wearing one of those. I draw the line at buying one of those. And Wayne, if I'd have known you wore one of those, we wouldn't have invited you onto the show, despite your lovely large hat.
Brilliant.
That's it. That's my bit done.
There you go. That's
Simon.
Well, just to remind me,
Yeah.
your Industar 60 something, or
37.
37. What's the aperture on it?
Well, at wide open, it goes to 4.5.
Right. Okay.
Downwards, it goes to f64.
Yeah. No, it was the wide open bit that I was interested in, because tell me if we've already talked about this, but I've got a Tire tear. I think it's Tire.
Toyo.
No.
Toyo.
It's not Toyo. It's not that.
Toyo.
Who knows? We might explain what we're talking about with that later.
Don't.
Yeah, we'll leave that. We'll leave people think, what on earth is going on? But no, it's not a Toyo. It's a Tear 33, and which is a 300mm f4.5.
How do you spell tear?
TAIR.
Okay.
Although mine's in the Cyrillic, so he didn't actually say that, but I know that's what it is.
So it's a Russian-y thing, is it?
It is, yeah.
Soviet Union.
It is,
thing.
And it's got an aperture, and it's not for large format. It's actually meant for a Kiev 88, which is known as affectionately or not affectionately, depending on how you want to look at it, is a Hasselbladsky. So to all intents and purposes.
Is it? Sorry, Simon. Is it just Kiev 88s that are known as Hasselbladskys, or is that generic brand? Well, I say generic. Is that sort of family of medium format cameras like
Salute and
Salutes and stuff like that? Yeah,
correct.
Yeah.
So this is one of the. I think there's at least 3 different kinds. But to look at, you could easily mistake it as a Hasselblad 500 cm or 500 something like that. The closer you get to it, the more you notice the differences. But the biggest usual difference is that this one actually works, because almost all of them don't work. But this one does. But more to the point, though, this lens that came with it is a 304.5, and that's the reason pretty much why I bought this camera quite cheaply, because it's not a massively desirable camera, and it's got probably the least desirable lens to have on it. So I did quite well with this. But I think I put a picture up on my Instagram account, and I can't remember who it was that suggested it, or it was somewhere in one of the Facebook groups. That somebody goes, I bet that will cover 4x5, and I was thinking, I wonder if it does. And so the next thing I did was I went to see if this lens did what many Soviet lenses, and not just Soviet lenses, some of perhaps the older design of lenses in general, where you could actually physically unscrew the optical block from the helical part of the body, and you could, and you just unscrew it, easy as you like. Excuse me. And so I then thought, well, okay, will it cover 4x5? So I offered it up to probably my speed graphic, I think, and I got infinity, and I've got full coverage. And I was thinking, well, that's cool. So how far will it go? And so I put it on my still yet to be used Kodak. Was it Specialist on? Which model is it? Kodak
Dave, Simon has all these cameras, but he doesn't go out and take any bloody pictures. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Yes, that's what photography is all about.
I couldn't resist it.
It's all about the gear.
It is.
Yeah, and so I've got a Specialist Model 2, Kodak Specialist Model 2, really nice one, and it's half plate. I was hoping it was going to be 7x5, but it's actually half plate, and but it covers that as well. No problem at all, covering half plate. And that got me thinking, when I eventually do actually go and take some photos, or more to the point, when I get access again to the Six Towns Darkroom, which has also got a studio there that can be completely blacked out, I want to have a go at doing the Peter Defty thing, because I could use it on half plate and switch the lights off, get my subject to sit there in the dark for a bit, and so the pupils dilate, calculate the right lighting, and just use the flash as the shutter, Obviously, uncover the lens and cover the lens as well. But I think this would be fantastic for you. But just quickly, the reason I wanted to talk about your lens is just how heavy is your lens?
Pretty heavy.
I mean,
I don't know.
Hazard a guess?
I could go and get some scales. I don't know. It's heavy, but it fits on the front of my Doyo. Hang on, I'm going to go get some scales. Talk amongst yourselves, girls.
Now we're going to start weighing lenses. Is that the way we're heading? Okay.
It may well do. It may do. Yeah.
That sounds very impressive. Yeah.
I mean, on other podcasts, it's not uncommon for people to start shooting cameras off and listening to the shutter sound. So I don't see why we can't weigh lenses.
Don't get me started on that one.
Right.
Don't get me started.
Yeah. If we're talking about who's got the biggest ones, Dave will get his scales out.
Yeah.
So I can give you a measurement in milliliters, in grams,
No.
Milliliters.
in fluid ounces, in pounds and ounces,
Pounds and ounces.
or grams. What do you want?
Can you do stones?
No. This is well, I could if I go and get the bathroom scales.
Yeah.
Okay, no, go carry on.
Yeah. So let's go. Let's go grams and stone.
I don't know about stone. Grams, it's whoa, 840 grams.
Right. Okay.
Right, hang on. I'm going to get my scales because I'm going to do my cook one. Hang on. Right, I'll be back.
Yeah. Talk amongst yourself, Andrew, while we both disappear.
And it's 29 fluid ounces apparently. No one. There's just me and you listeners. And so, what is a fluid ounce? It's for the American listeners, because you don't do metric, do you? It's 1 pound and 13.6 ounces. 1 pound 30. It just went up to 1 pound and 13.7 ounces. So that's for you American listeners.
Right. Okay. I'm switching.
It's 1 pound and 13 ounces, Simon. I just said for our American listeners.
Yeah, I struggle with pounds, I've got to say.
It's 30 fluid ounces.
Oh, God.
Right.
Okay,
now,
I've just got. So this is a Taylor Cook lens. So it's a 12-inch soft focus, and it's what is it? 3 kilograms. So
Yeah, well, that's just ridiculous, isn't it?
yeah, you're trying too hard.
Was that great big thing you were showing us before we started?
yeah. No, that's a bigger one. This one came with that Kodak camera I bought the other day. The big 7-inch studio camera. So yeah.
Okay,
so,
that makes sense.
Well, I was going to say, for completeness here, I'm just going to get my Aeroactar, which I know Dave's got one of these, but I'm just curious now.
I am as well.
This is a fun way to spend a morning, isn't it? On a
this is what
podcast,
photography is all
weighing
about.
lenses.
Come on.
Right, so one Aeroactar is 1.5 kilos.
No, mine's like one for backpacking, isn't it, compared to yours?
Yours is yeah, absolutely. It's nothing.
And
I mean, joking aside, I mean, it is actually really important. I mean, you start sticking this stuff on the front of a flimsy whatever it is front standard, and you're going to have one hell of a mess on the floor if your tripod's not strong enough. So,
yeah.
And the other thing I've noticed is also where your tripod mount is actually positioned, because my wet plate camera, when I had to put the mount on it, I positioned it in the center of the camera, and of course, I should have put it towards the front so that it counteracted the weight of the lens as well. So, but there you go, a lesson learned.
Yeah. Well, my 1.5 kilo Aeroactar for our American friends is 3 pounds and 5.5 ounces, but that isn't really what we're talking about. We're talking about this Tear 33, which is not as heavy. I'll stick with pounds for now, because that's what's on there. So that's nearly 3 pounds. And what's that in French?
That'd be about 400 kilograms. Grams, rather.
Why isn't it changing? Okay. This is great, isn't it? This is good good TV.
Fantastic.
Oh, I'm pressing the wrong button. That's what it is. Here we go, grams. So it's 1,180 grams. And that's the thing. It's a damn heavy thing. But I was just wondering whether yours with it being specifically designed for large format, and it's probably, I assume it's a normal lens rather than a telephoto lens. Would that be fair?
It would be fair, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Whereas this is definitely a telephoto.
Yeah, no, I have to get full bellows extension on my Toyo to get focus, infinity.
Yeah.
And with my bomb camera, it doesn't quite go. I can't quite get enough. I can't get it out long enough. You see what I mean?
You're struggling with length, aren't you?
I am. Yeah, I'm falling short on the length.
Yeah.
I can't extend it long enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that got me thinking, because having sold years ago my Sinar monorail, I thought, perhaps I need a monorail. Perhaps just for completeness, maybe I need a monorail setup. And I thought, no, just stop it, Andrew. You really don't. So what I might need is like a 120mm lens. That's another conversation I'm having with folks in the Facebook group. But anyway, that's another story. So I can use this on my Toyo.
Good. Well, this lens, I mean, it's big. It's a fair bit heavier, and it's clearly a different optical design. But it has no problem at all going onto a speed graphic, which I'm not sure if a speed graphic would struggle with 300mm or not. Actually, because that's a fair bit of extension, isn't it? But this was no problem at all. I just need to make a mount, but ideally, I really fancy doing that. Switch the lights off and take a picture of somebody head on. I really like that idea.
Yeah, it sounds nice. Yeah. You need an MPP Mark 8. That's what you need. There's another one to add to the list.
Well, I've got a MPP Micropress, an earlier one, which is still unrepaired.
Yep.
Yeah. So who knows? I might even get round to doing that at some point. What
was the one you sold to Jimmy? Sorry, Simon. What was the one you sold to Jimmy Hickford, Dave?
The one I saw, that was the 1942 speed graphic, which has got a different lens board to all the others, as we found out, or as he's just found out. So, but beautiful camera, absolutely. That's my very first camera I ever bought, my first large format, and I still love that camera. The smell of them is just, that's half the thing about large format is the smell of the cameras, I think. So, but that's a whole new subject. There you go.
We never thought that we'd go down there, camera smells.
Well, you should listen to the Lensless podcast, Simon, if you want. When we were interviewing Rachel Brewster Wright, I won't quite repeat what Corey said, but if you want to laugh, because actually, if you want to listen to one episode, that one where she did the pinhole study of the people in her street for VE Day. Yeah. So it was a great conversation with her, but at one point we get onto the subject of pinhole cameras that are made out of wood, and Corey says something, but you just need to go and listen to it. And Rachel manfully carried on for it, or she did in a very mature, ladylike way. She carried on through it.
There's a reason for that. She does a weekly show with Graham. With
she's probably used to that sort of stuff, isn't it?
Took her in a stride quite easily, I'd imagine.
Yeah, so it takes sniffing cameras, or more more specifically, sniffing what they're made of. Exactly. You can imagine what it was he said.
Well, I've actually, if ever I go into my studio, or into the design studio, I sometimes take a camera with me, as you do. And I've got a guy there, and I said, "What?" I walk up to him. He says, "Hang on, let me think about it. Let me think. Right, okay, open it up." And I open it up. He says, "Yeah, that's the smell." So there you go. So people do enjoy that sort of thing. It's a bit like getting into an old Ford Prefect, isn't it? It's like that smell of it. It's lovely. So anyway,
peel apart Polaroid does it for me.
Oh, don't go there. Yeah, actually, Fomapan has got a really strong smell at the moment as well. So there you go.
Is it?
Yeah, the Fomapan I'm using, it's got a really strong smell. Yeah, absolutely.
Sheet film or roll film?
Sheet film. Matter? Yeah, I don't do roll film, but sheet film. Yeah. So I've got loads of roll film in the fridge, but I don't use it anymore. So there you go. But that's another story.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much it for my extensive large format 2.5 weeks. Dave,
sorry, I can't believe you actually haven't put a camera up and made some pictures in the back garden. We gave you very precise instructions last time. You were to photograph the trees in each week, as a project. Do you remember?
I do. And to be fair to me, I have been thinking about it
Well, that's it then.
Yeah, I've asked my wife, who's a professional gardener, and asked her, "Can you get me some dead flowers, please?"
Yeah.
And but not just any dead flowers. I want interesting dead flowers, which is like looking at me like I've gone nuts.
Why don't you just buy some flowers for your wife? Right. There's the first thing. Right. So this is a result, because you're gonna satisfy so many things at once. You can buy flowers for the lovely lady, and that'll put you in a good book straight away. And then you can just, as they die, you can photograph them at various stages, like John Blakemore does. Yeah. And then when they're really dead, you can arrange them on an old bit of wood or something, and light it with your fancy lights and stuff, and you can get some real arty-farty shots of dead flowers.
This is the thing, though. Not all dead flowers are equally interesting, are they? And I don't know if carnations go particularly good.
No, tulips are good.
That's too late for those.
A bit later in the year, you can, when the poppies, if you've got those poppies that seem to grow everywhere.
Yeah,
the poppy heads, when they're dried off, they make nice studies, don't they?
Yeah, well, we've got plenty of those at the moment, so that's a good one to keep.
Just wait. The birds, don't pull them up once they stop flowering. Just let them dry out, because then the seeds will disperse, and when they go brown and brittle, they make lovely subjects.
Yeah,
that's an interesting. That leads me on to something else. I'm just doing a little project at the moment where I've just dismantled a Reflex SL66 SLR camera because a friend of mine gave me a body of one, and I've taken the front lens mount off of it, and I'm now working out how to fit it onto a speed graphic board, because with the old Reflex lenses you can reverse mount them and they become macro lenses, so you can literally go right inside the seed bud sort of thing. And I did a series of those with the Reflex years ago, and I've also got a 40mm wide angle, which obviously the coverage isn't going to be the same, but there you go. Flowers are great. Dead flowers are great. I'm doing a series at the moment with the big Mahogany Camera of things that I've found that are dead. I know lots of people have done it.
Well, that bird you found, didn't you? Or I presume you didn't go out and shoot it.
No. Well, no. It was. I just plucked it out of its nest. No, I didn't. No, no. I found this gorgeous little thing, and then the birds were singing, so it kind of seemed apt that I got a sheet of music.
Probably singing for its lost little friend that you just murdered.
No. Well, I hadn't murdered it. I would never do anything like that. No, I've got people bring me things as well, as you can imagine. People tend to bring me dead things, like someone bought me.
Is this like Bagpuss?
Yeah. Except this one had horns and skin on it, I think. But I had a monk jack head that had mummified, that was found in a barn, and But I did a series a little while ago with what are really nice at the moment. You should do, Simon, is dandelions, because obviously they look amazing. And I put one in a jar of water and then backlit it with black. And of course, as it starts to peel over, you get the degradation of the stalk, and then you get the individual tiny little seeds start to float off. And I photographed that with the big Mahogany Camera, f64, and at 5x4, and the level of detail on that was stunning. So anything that's dying, I think, and is gone through its peak is wonderful to shoot. So anyway, sorry, I'm crashing your story.
No, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, I'm beginning to think we're actually crashing you, because we haven't really talked about you at all yet. But it's been fascinating. I'm just trying to think about what you just said there about the dandelion head, and I mean, if you can, I wouldn't mind you if you could share a photograph of what you did there. That was I'd love to see what you did with that.
Absolutely. I'll look when this obviously this podcast is going out now live, but when it does actually go up, I'll put a little post up about stuff we talked about that day, today, and with various images, and then people can see what madness I was talking about. But yeah, absolutely. But dandelions, go for that. They're out there, man. So they look amazing. So
they do, and yeah, I'm going to do that. Anyway, that's easily enough about me. So Dave, what have you been up to lately?
What have I been up to? I've been up to lots of stuff in my lane. As you know, I've got my little lane that I spend a lot of time in. I'm absolutely falling in love again with pinhole photography. I do own one camera that I bought, but all my other cameras I've made. So from bits of old cameras or bits of old wood. as Andrew knows, or tin cans. And I'm finding that incredibly creative because you can go off a wander with a few of those in your rucksack and take just the most creative shots I can take, I think. I'm finding him so inspiring. And the other thing is a big nod here to Jeff Perry is that Jeff made me the 5x4 Graphlot backs. So when I made my first pinhole camera, I just stuck one of those on. So the issue I always had was when I was shooting pinhole, I always had to changing bags and everything else. Of course, now I can just load up as many 5.4 film holders as I want, and off I go. So that's changed that. I'm working on a project where I'm going to try and reproduce a stained glass window using wet plate collodion. So get the models to take the poses that are in the church window and then try and reshoot those and make a stained glass window. So that's a little project I've got in mind. Yeah, that's it. Wet plate collodion, a lot of at the moment, and obviously large format. I did shoot a little while ago over in the fields at the back. So yeah, that's a bit of what I do. If you follow my Instagram feed, you'll know it's kind of, I just follow my heart, whatever happens that day, whether the sun's out or it's dark or whatever. And if my daughters will allow me to photograph them, then they get photographed as well. But that's basically what I'm up to. And then converting stuff as well. Still trying to repair a few cameras and cut the backs off of lenses with hacksaws if I can in my studio, in my workshop, which would horrify most of you out there. I tend to go with, if I have a lens, I tend to see if I hold it up, have a look, hold it against the wall, work out what the depth of field is, the aperture, shove it in. And if the image looks nice, I'll make a mount for it and take some pictures. So probably my most creative lens is really a big ball projector lens that I bought, Jeff Perry mentioned, and that's the one I hacksawed the back off of. And then I made a mount for it to go into the Reflex Super D. So that's a lot of those lane shots of the ladies falling back. If you look at my website, that was the game changer. So yeah, that's what I'm up to at the moment.
Your old pram shots, those sort of ones, that's all in the lane, isn't it?
Yeah, they're all in the lane. The pram is just a nice prop because, well, if I'm waiting for a model or I'm thinking about a model, and obviously I haven't got any at the moment, that gives me something. And there's something quite iconic about that. And it's people find it quite disturbing. So I think, well, that's good. That's a good start. It's a talking point. I know the lovely Hilary Clark, when she came here to do a workshop with me, she just loved it. And same as Craig when he came. There's something quite iconic about those spokes and the mystery of what's in there and Rosemary's Baby and all that sort of thing. So, yeah. And what I love at the moment is watching the light change. You know, the light at the beginning of the day and through the middle, the way it comes through the trees, and then that perfect light at the end of the day when it's the shaft of light starts to run through and you get the long shadows. And so yeah, sometimes it's just looking and enjoying the views and then thinking, you know what, one day I might be able to capture that. So yeah, well, that's it. That's what I've been up to.
You are particularly blessed. You know, was it just before Christmas or just after Christmas I came to see you? I forget. It was one of those, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I made a mistake of cleaning the car the day before I drove down his
told you about that
lane.
Schoolboy error, man. Schoolboy error. Yeah.
But you are rather blessed. So Dave lives in this. You know, if you ever get a chance to go and visit Dave, Simon, you know, if one day,
yes,
Dave lives in this. What I would just describe as a sort of creative space. You know, he's that lane he's talking about. You come out of his house and you've got this, you know, track with the trees all bending over to form this natural tunnel, which I think is probably a public footpath, but I'm not sure how many folks walk
it is there. It is a public footpath, and when we're doing nude photography down there, it's quite interesting. But it is.
Yeah, well, what have I told you about that? Just keep your clothes on when you're photographing.
Well, I know it is a bit off-putting for the models when I get undressed, but no, that's horrible. That's horrible.
So, but other than that, you know, apart from, you know, it's a lovely space you've got in your. You've got this work studio sort of area, which is just full of weirdest things, lovely lighting, big windows, and cameras on big wooden stands on wheels, and mannequins and jars full of dolls and animal heads. pickled children.
Absolutely.
And then in your sort of conservatory area, it's like some kind of Victorian conservatory thing. You've got another wet plate camera set up there, photographing this wonderful sort of space within the conservatory. So, most of us are wandering around our houses and thinking, well, not quite sure what to do now. And you're very blessed. You're very blessed and very lucky, and I'm sure you realise it. But it's a great spot you live in, and
yes,
you must be constantly inspired. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I am. I know how lucky I am. I built the studio. It was a falling down barn at one point. Decided to turn it into a studio. We took the wrought iron off the outside, corrugated, and stuck it on the inside because it's more creative. I've got my dark room there as well, and I've got my workshop for building cameras. So it's a little micro bubble. When I come home, if I'm working somewhere, I can spend days just pottering around. They'll often see me wandering off through the fields because I use the pram as my photography trolley. So I'll have a mannequin sticking out. I'll have a large format camera and a tripod. And last time I was seen I was wandering off with a generator as well. I've just bought a generator. So trying to do night photography and a smoke machine as well. So it's kind of getting a bit out of hand. But I'm very lucky, very, very lucky. And that's why I love doing workshops. And I love people to come and explore it themselves, because I'm lucky to have some beautiful cameras, Aero Hectars or the Jeff Perry, 45s. And we talk about cameras a lot, and we talk about aeros and speed graphics, and it's not until you actually look through the ground glass screen at the back that you start to realize what people are talking about. And that's how I fell in love with it. And it wasn't until I first looked through the top of a Super D Reflex, Graflex, that the first reaction I had, and I think you had it, Andrew, as well, when you looked down was just wow. It was just like, oh my God, it's just wow. And that's why I tend to follow my own path with lenses, and if it works, I just cut them out and screw it together and stick it in. Jeff's changed a lot of that for me, because on the one he's made me, I've got tilt on it as well. So that's a whole new ball game. We're shooting 5.4 SLR with a big bull lens in it, 2.8 wide open, stopped down with computer printed Waterhouse stops, etc., etc. But it's the process, isn't it? And living there, how can you not be creative and excited? So I'm very lucky. So yes, I understand that. Definitely.
Dave, I think this is a good time to talk a bit wider about yourself, so people can get a better idea about who you are, where you've come from and stuff. And I'm just got your Instagram feed up in front of me at the moment, and you're absolutely one of those rare breed of photographers that you look at the work and you think, this is a photographer that specialises in this, and then you look at what you've got and you think, oh no, perhaps he specialises in this, because there's multi-genre things going on here that show excellence. And there are different. You've got different techniques. You shoot in colour, you shoot in black and white, you're doing collodion, you're doing sheet film, you're doing all sorts of things, and you talked about pinhole as well. It's. I'm very envious of you, because you seem to be able to just go out and decide, I'm going to take this kind of photograph and I'm going to do it brilliantly, and that's just how it is. So how did you get that good?
Well, that's very kind of you to say that. I think a lot of people might say, well, you should actually specialise. But life is too short for that. And the way I've always looked at my photography is that when I'm not here one day, my kids will have a box of negatives, and hopefully some of them will be worth looking at and some of them won't. But I'll give you a brief. Let's say brief. How I got to where I got to. So it all started for me in 1973 at London College of Print, and I trained as a litho film camera operator. So using 24-20 sheets of film, we were using potassium ferrocyanide, carbon arcs, huge wooden cameras with wooden mounts on them, etc., etc. I used to go to London College of Print, and I learned probably the best mantra that I usually say in one of my workshops. One thing I remember from that was I was taught that photography is the control of many unforeseen variables. And that's always stayed with me. And I always thought, you know what, and it came that even more now that I'm doing what I do now, that it means so much more to me. Anyway, so I did London College of Print. I did graphic repro. I was using large sheets of film. And then Apple Macs came out and the whole trade died, literally in a few weeks. So fortunately, I was in a position where I had some good client contacts, etc. And we set up a design studio. And we were using Apple Macs and etc. And in the meantime, I bought my first camera, which was a Canon AE1, which was in 1976, and I love that camera. In fact, there's a Bowie picture I put up on Instagram the other day that I took live on stage in colour with that, and still a beautiful camera, and it still works. It's still behind me in the cupboard, so that's stood the test of time. Anyway, so we set up this design studio, and cut into the chase. We started doing lots of photo shoots, and we had big Hasselblads, and we had big digital backs, and then Photoshop, and then we had 500 megabyte files, and then 2 gigabyte files, and was directing shoots. And I found that I was spending so much time in Photoshop, it was actually completely killed my passion for photography. And in the same time, I bought my first Nikon digital camera, and I just thought, this is amazing. I can just basically, if I just point this thing roughly in a direction with some sort of speed and some idea of aperture, I'll get a brilliant image. And I did. And both of those came together, and photography became so boring. It was just too easy. It was so easy. Anyway, one thing led to another. Busy company, went through a sad divorce and a near breakdown. So I did what everyone does. I went to live in Transylvania. So I lived in Transylvania for a month. And I lived in a cottage in the woods with no electricity and no running water. And I just had a horse that I had to get out of the stables in the morning and groom, and candles at night. And I had a dog called Wolfie that used to protect me from bears outside my house, because there were like nails sticking out the door because the bears tried to get in. Tries to stop the bears coming in. So I lived in this place with this horse, and we had a horse and cart. We used to go to get water from the spring and go back and live by nature. But what happened, I didn't have a camera with me at all. And but what I did have was an iPhone. And all of a sudden, I just fell in love with the beauty around me and the people and the beautiful faces. And if you look at, there's a link I'll give you called Inka Ruka, and she's a photographer that took pictures around there. And these deep, beautiful pictures of old lined faces in old buildings. And so I started using my iPhone, and I started taking pictures and posting them on Instagram, and people were interested. And my fuel for photography and capturing things came back, but no camera, no film, no nothing. And when I came back, I produced a book, and I was amazed by it. Anyway, another thing happened was I was working away one day. I'd gone back to work, all was well, and one of my designers came up and he showed me an article. And the article was an article about Vivian Mayer. And all the time I'd been taking my pictures with my iPhone, I was using an app called Hipstamatic that created these old-fashioned pictures. And I saw her work, and the bug suddenly came back, and I thought Reflex. So bought my first Reflex, couldn't work out how to get the film in, but put the film in, got it back, and I was in love again. It's a bit like when you look through the top of a Reflex and you see a different world. Everybody is just amazed. Eventually, I took it around India, and I did 48 rolls of colour film in it. And it's just a talking point. As we all know, old cameras tend to attract people, good and bad, but mostly good. 9 times out of 10, it's good. So I fell in love with film photography again and started processing my own. And then the big one for me was somebody showed me an article of about Dave Burnett. Now, Dave Burnett is a large format photographer who sometimes comments on my pictures, which is lovely. But he photographed the 2012 Olympic Games using a speed graphic with an Aero Ectar and a Cambo mirrored back on it. And when I saw his pictures, there's a shot he's got of Usain Bolt coming over the line at 200 meters. It just, of all the thousands of amazing cameras you see in the crowd, you see this one grey-haired man with this old speed graphic. His was the one. And the picture of the divers going off the top board on the speed graphic. And I just thought, oh, my word, this is photography. This is what it's about. So that led me to my 1942 speed graphic. And I couldn't even open it when I got it. I didn't know how it opened. And with the deal came two film holders, but they turned out to mahogany plate holders for an old camera. I tried to fit them in. I didn't know how they worked. Anyway, so that was it. I was off on that large format journey. Fell in love with that, started processing, bought a Mod 54, doing some all my own stuff then, converted the dark rooms, made the studio, until one day I saw some work by Jeff Perry, and I noticed he had that big red lens on his camera. And I thought, what the hell's going on? I liked his work. And then I suddenly realized he's using a single lens reflex. And it's like, that was the game changer for me, because I bought the Super D, and I bought a big Boule lens, a 2.8 lens. And I went into my workshop and I got a hacksaw and I just cut 4 inches off the back of it. And it took me 2 hours to do it. And I couldn't move my wrist for 2 weeks afterwards. Anyway, I made up a lens board, I put it in, and then I had the reaction I think Andrew had when you looked through the back of it. I looked through it. It was like, oh, my word, wow. And suddenly you've got this 2.8 depth of field. You've got this amazing focus plane. And then the creativity came. So if you look on my website, you'll see there's a picture I've got of Camille on the front cover. Now, she's falling backwards. And where she's falling backwards, everyone sort of said, how could you do that large format? I mean, how do you know where the focus plane is? You know, because you've got to put the film holder in. But of course, the beauty of shooting with a Super D is it's SLR. So the film's already in there. The dark slide's pulled out. She knows what I'm doing. And I'm literally focusing to her eyeball the moment she starts to fall. And then bang, you get the shot. And one of the shots I got, it just started to rain. So I had 200 foot of extension leads running down the lane. She's got a huge spotlight behind her, which you can't see because it's covered by the kimono. So that's backlighting her. And I've also got a smoke machine in the field next to me blowing smoke across. But just as we took the shot, it started to rain. And on one of the shots, you can see 4 lines of rain coming down as well. And that's why I love large format photography, because it enables you to have a vision in your mind or a picture that you want. And we planned this shoot for ages. And then it finally comes together, you know, and then she put the kimono on, she rolls her eyes, she lays back, and then bang, you get the shot. And I think probably we're all the same. I know we're all the same. I love the fact that when you load that drum up and you're ready to sort of go through and start developing, you load it up, but you don't know. I might have 4 sheets of blank film in there, and I still do it even now. That's why you see all my film holders, I write exposed or new on the actual dark slides, just so that when I'm in the heat of a shoot, if I'm using, 20 film holders, and it's brilliant, and sometimes you put the dark slide in the wrong way around or whatever. So I try and minimize everything to get it as slick as I can now. But it's not until you take that final lid off, that developing tank, you might have the best picture in the world in there, but you don't know, you know? And I still get a buzz every time I take that sheet out and then you look at it for the first time and you go, oh, yes, that's the killer shot. There was one shot I got, and I think I put a post on Instagram, and it was, I was up in London. I'd done a shoot with a girl up in London. I was walking back, and I'd gone across the Millennium Bridge, and I had the Crown Graphic with me, which obviously isn't SLR, and it hasn't got a focal plane shutter in it. So I was walking back past St. Paul's, and there was loads of photographers there photographing it because the light had gone. And I was watching them all, and I was thinking, that's when you decide, is it worth taking a picture? So I knew there was an office block further down, and I kept walking down, and I've got some pictures of Sadie against it as well. But you can get St. Paul's Cathedral, but there's a huge black window, and if you push the large format camera right up against it, you get the reflection of it. And I stood there, and I waited, and I had 1 sheet of film left. I had 6 for the day, and I had 1 sheet left. And I waited, and every time I waited for a bus, it went the wrong way. And I thought, oh, I went the wrong way. So I waited, and I went down. I was on about a tenth of a second exposure. I was winging it because nearly all of my metering is done with an iPhone. I don't use a meter. I just use an iPhone. And I was waiting for this bus, and this bus finally came, and I took the shot. And when I processed it, I won't say what I said when it came out, but everything was perfect. St. Paul's was in focus. The light on the traffic light had turned to red, and the bus had gone through the light and was blurred as it went through behind, sort of thing. And you get that shot, and you think that makes up for all the other 50 shots that didn't work quite as well. So that's where I got to. Then I did wet plate collodion with John Brewer up in Manchester. Best thing ever. First time I did a print, I was just, it blew me away. But anyway, sorry guys, I'm just talking. But that's where I am. And now I'm just in this world of taking weird pictures and doing what I do. So that's me, basically. I could go on forever, but I won't.
It's hard to work out where you go from there. There's so many areas which we could talk about. I think what one of the things that made me smile in what you were describing there is that when you were talking about the photograph on your the main photograph on your website with the woman in the kimono falling backwards. It's just you talk through the work that you put into actually getting that shot, and it's enormous. That's the thing. And this is for me and probably many other people one of the biggest problems is that we have as photographers is that many of us are technically capable of taking a good photograph, but it's something else to actually set the shot up and the thought process that goes into, I'm going to take this, coming up with the idea, this is the photograph I want to take, is for me, is the hardest single thing. And then the next thing is like, the effort that you went through to take this, 200 meters of cable, smoke machines and all of those things. It's just, it blows my mind.
Well,
Simon, sorry, go on, Dave.
No, you carry on, please.
Well, I'll just say something. Then you can comment and see if I'm on the right line. Let's not use this as a barrier to stop us doing anything, because Dave is what I would call a sort of conceptual. And I use the word artist because that's what it is really. He clearly has these ideas. He plans it for a long time, and one shot probably feeds off another, and he gets different ideas about how he can take it. And so he'd got that shot in mind, and he'd got this image in mind. The St. Paul's one. He's not just wandering around London with a camera. So, that looks nice. I'm going to take a technically competent picture. Or he's not just going out into the fens like I am. I think, well, actually, that's I'm going to stop and take a picture of that pumping station because that's kind of like the sort of stuff I like to take, and it might make a nice print. Dave seems to get his kicks out of this whole visualization of a work of art and bringing elements together, and it could just be a lovely picture, or it could be like with exploring dead animals and dead things. There's probably some other bit of meaning there that Dave's working into his pictures, but that shouldn't stop us going out there and just really enjoying using a large format camera. And
absolutely not,
and making a balls up of it like I did. And enjoying the whole experience, But Dave, whilst I would love to produce the work that Dave does, I first of all, I don't think I've got the vision. Secondly, I don't think I've got the patience. But vision, I think, is probably what you need, And I think the space that you live in, Dave, probably helps you with that vision. And one project with the models you work with as well probably feeds off and inspires you down other avenues, I would think.
100%. And 100%, I mean, nothing should stop anyone getting out there and doing it, because we all get such pleasure from it. I mean, there's such pleasure in working with these old cameras. I remember looking at my parents' or my grandparents' photographs and thinking, why are they so much better than what we produce now? And I think that was in the 80s. And I always was fascinated by Victorian photography, and it's all there for us because we're going back using those old lenses, and old processes. And 100%. There's nothing wrong. I mean, a dead thing or a tree, it doesn't really matter what your concept is. Just take it. I mean, just enjoy it. And you're right. I mean, having my studio helps a lot because I'll stand there with a cup of coffee one day just looking. I mean, if you look I don't know if you've got my website up, but if you look on my website, there's a shot of Gabby, a model I shoot with all the time. And I've got a 2,000 watt spotlight outside the window. That's how I did that shot. And the smoke machine. And then she's holding the little ball. But what I enjoy the most is trying to create pictures that people don't quite sometimes understand what's happening. So there was a shoot I did the other week, whereas I focused on in the water, but not on the subject. So the subject's completely out of focus. But in the reflection, they are focused. So you could think of it as, well, that's a crap picture. Or you could look into it a bit longer and think, oh, there is something there. Or turning pictures around. That's one I love. I love reflection shots where you just turn the picture upside down and you enter another world. You literally enter a different space. And the shot, and I did recently a hilarious one because I've got that sort of 8-foot mirror in the studio, and I set up my wet plate camera, and what I spent was a day probably just positioning mirrors, so with loads of different angles, looking at mannequins around me, and did this very rare self-portrait of me, and my daughter was in it as well. But that's what I enjoy, and it's this thinking about it and thinking of the process, and. I know the game is that the more cameras you have when you shuffle off this mortal coil, you're the winner. But but I am getting to a point now where I'm working on cameras to sell them, to finance my ultimate camera, which I think you know about, Andrew, don't you? So and then I shall be getting rid of a lot of stuff then, and I'm gradually cutting it down because the Jeff Super Reflex is now starting to become my studio camera. And I hadn't got to grips with it at first because I had this tilt shift going on, and I was like, what's going on, But now you start to get a look. I mean, there was a bit like I'd always wanted to do an underwater shoot with a large format. So I'm looking at trying to build a Perspex tank that I can have bricks on it that I can lower underwater. But the shoot I did do where it's underwater, I'm actually outside the tank. So there's a shot on my website of the girl swimming towards you, and it's just finding interesting things, isn't it? Reflections. I love windows. We can all photograph in windows and reflections and things like that. And sticking, you don't have to spend a fortune on lighting. You see people spending thousands of pounds on lighting. I mean, most of my lightings come from, where did I get it from? Screwfix. I just buy builders' rechargeable battery lights and stick them in things, so the light's coming out of the pram or whatever. So it doesn't really matter if I lose it or if it gets broken, but there you go. And I just buy loads of stuff secondhand, really, and then sell it on if it doesn't work. So, there you go. I mean, I've got a camera at the moment, which is, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Aero Liberator, which is John Minnick makes, which is a beautiful small Super D, the smaller version of the Super D with an Aero Ectar, and he has to do a lot of magical work inside with the mirrors to be able to get the lens to go far enough back, and that creates beautiful images. But they're 4x4, and I've got one of these cameras, and I use it for the workshop because people get to handle it. But it's time to let it go, because I've moved on to the 5.4 larger version now with Jeff. And it's time to let things go. It's a bit like my Reflex. I love my Reflex cameras, and they still are some of the best shots I've ever taken, but I'm not shooting with them anymore. So it's time to let them go. I mean, the only other thing that's coming out of this COVID thing, guys, is I'm finding that, I don't know if you've noticed it, but secondhand cameras and secondhand camera gear is getting a bit pricey these days. So I think everyone's getting back into it. So maybe I'll just hang on to it a bit longer. But I have left a note in my will to my girls: don't ever just take this lot to a junk shop. So go to the Large Format Podcast and tell them it's all for sale.
As one of the many areas I want to talk to you about, and you've touched upon it, where there's a photograph of a woman swimming underwater towards you.
Yeah.
Tell us about the tank.
Okay, so there was a large underwater tank that I wanted to hire to do this shoot myself, but it's £3,000 a day to hire, so I didn't do that. But there is a group, and that's another thing, guys, for people out there. You talk about you might not have the patience, or you're technically good. Sometimes join some photo groups. There's one I go to, and he'll set up the model. He'll get a great model in, someone I've wanted to photograph for a while. There'll be 8 other photographers all shooting digital. And when I did some shots, you'll see some shots. There's like Joan of Arc shots I do. That girl there, I get literally 4 sessions of 2 minutes out of 4 hours. So I've got to be quick with my camera, because they're all shooting bang, 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 bang. I'm shooting with my speed graphic. But the results, you look at the girl holding the sword with the suit of armor. That's done with the... the tank... Anyway, go to the tank. So they put on one of those days, and everyone was photographing from the tank on the side. But I photographed from the end so that she was swimming towards me. So basically, I've got a large volume of water, 2-inch plate glass in front of me. It's lit from above. And that's it, basically. She's swimming towards me. I used the Super Reflex 54 from Jeff. I had various backs on it. I was shooting Polaroids, FP 100C, and Fomapan 400. And the Fomapan 400 is what I love the most. And there's a few other shots below that you'll see that I actually did with a digital camera. And that's something I really want to explore more, because, again, it's that thing where you can't quite work out what you're looking at. Is she sinking? Is she swimming? Is she drowning? Is she floating? I did a whole series of that. So I'd say when we do the podcast, I'll put up a few shots from that as well. But that was fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So I was shooting 400 wide open at 2.8, and I think I was 60th of a second, and I was pushing it at that as well. So, but there you get the reflection from under the water. So you're seeing the surface of the water from underneath. Again, it just creates these beautiful illusions. So that was that one anyway.
How did you know, just from a technical point of view, when to fire that shutter? Or I suppose with an SLR, you're watching it as well, are you? You're watching it at the point at when she comes into focus, where you're sort of pre-focusing at a spot and think, right?
No, absolutely not. No, I'm focusing live. So I'm focusing up until I push the shutter. So, and there'll be a few where she'll be like 4 millimeters out front and back, because you're shooting at 2.8. Yeah. But 9 times out of 10, they all came out pretty well, because she's not moving quickly. And that's why some of the ones where there's another shot, if you look on my website, where you can just see her sinking into the water. She's just sinking down. So that was a bit slower. There's another shot I've got a girl that I photographed in a wedding dress floating on the water. That was freezing, that shoot. But that was using my old Super D. But yeah, it's just I think that's what it is. And this is where I guess this is where I sometimes miss the point. It's not the amount of cameras you have, because you listen to, some of your amazing guests here. They've got one camera. They don't even know what the lens is. Perfect. You learn the craft of what you've got. And I'm a bit like a kid in a candy shop. I've got another lens to stick in and have a go with. But I am slowing down now. My Aero Ectar, yes. My Boule lens, yes. SLR, yes. Speed graphic when I've got a bit more time in the studio, and then the big Mahogany Beast when I want to do some sort of fine art dead stuff. But yeah, that's how I've focused on that. I literally focused up until the very last second, till her eye came into focus, then bang the shutter. So yeah, but that's the game changer when you're shooting large format with SLR, because suddenly it opens up everything, like the girl falling backwards. As she fell backwards, I focused. I knew roughly where she was going to go, but I was able to bang the focus straight onto her. And I think that lane thing, talked about the lanes thing, Andrew, the other lucky thing I've got there is I've got lots of wires hanging in the trees. So what I do is I get my Screwfix battery pack lights and I hang them in the trees, so they're all pointing at the model. So I actually create a little light ghetto in there. So it doesn't have to be high-tech stuff. It doesn't have to be pro photo this and pro photo that. Get some Screwfix battery-powered lights, get a model to hold it in front of her and let the light shine up her face, and you're going to get an interesting result. Or better still, she's looking into water, and you look at that reflection coming across the water. I mean, there's one shot there, if you look at my site, let's say, where she's holding the ball and the light's coming through. But yeah, you just play with it, don't you? You're playing with light and playing with trying to understand your camera, really. So,
well,
yes.
I mean, you are blessed in having that wonderful lane to photograph in,
Absolutely.
for a start. And the lady floating on the water, is that the water you've got in your part of your garden?
No, that's a spring nearby. I did do a shoot because the other big shoot that I want, and I've been thinking about it for 2 years now, is Ophelia, the famous Ophelia shot. I want to try and reproduce that. So, but we did have my friend model, Gabby. She did spend a whole. In fact, there's somewhere in my link somewhere. She spent a whole day in my pond, in my fish pond, and we're doing those wet shots because it's quite a special little magical place. So, yeah, that was it. We were just out. Yeah, go on.
With that Ophelia one, that's my general art knowledge is pretty crap, but that idea is from. Didn't someone paint a picture like that?
Oh, absolutely, it's the one that's in the Tate Gallery. So it's and there's all those beautiful medieval
someone famous.
Yeah.
Are you taking lots of influence? I mean, they look kind of as though they could be, pre-Raphaelite, Renaissance. I don't know. I'm just throwing words around now. That maybe one of them is.
Yeah, thank you. Pre-Raphaelite,
Rembrandt lighting. With that lady with the
keep going. Just keep going. Yeah. No,
are you spending time looking at those images and getting inspiration? Do you like to visit galleries, or do you look online, books? Or
I love galleries. I'm rubbish at looking at other photographers. I don't look at other photographers at all. I love one of my great joys in life is to get the train into London, and I'll have a pinhole camera with a few sheets of film in it, and the crown graphic, because it's light. My crown graphic, I've taken everything off it. I've got nothing on it now apart from I can just open it and that's it. And just wandering and then letting the day unfold. I've been thrown out of museums before. I got challenged once, strangely, in the Tate Modern. I was taking pictures of some famous picture, and this guy came up and he says, "You have to have you've got to have a license to do that." And I just said, "Yes, of course you have." And he said, "Oh, sorry," and he walked off. And I carried on shooting. So sometimes you just blag it. Sometimes you get thrown out by your collar. But yes, to look at the great masters, to go to the Tate and just be inspired, because I think I made a comment a while ago. I've been to Elton John had his exhibition of photography, not his photography, but what he's collected at the Tate Modern a few years ago. And I went and I saw a lot of the great photographs that I've admired all my life. And you can't help but be inspired. And I made some comment or a blog or something. I said, all the great photographs have been taken. There's nothing left to take nowadays. They've all been done. It was SLR. It was when I first saw the migrant mother picture, and I read the book about the migrant mother and how she took that picture, and she couldn't have taken it any other way because she had a graphics SLR. And she says she got out the car and she saw the migrant camp and she saw the mother sat there, and the pea harvest had failed and they were impoverished. And she walked towards them, and their mother had just sold the tyres off her car that day to get some food. The kids had been out collecting birds and berries and things that they could find. And they didn't actually talk to each other. And as she walked towards her, she looked up at her, and they both knew that they were going to get something from this. And she took those shots of the migrant mother with the children wrapped around her. And I just thought, that's what photography is about. It's that interaction, is that this is something worth recording and taking a picture of. Which leads me on to one other thing. It's like when I'm out taking photographs, I'm always very cautious these days of stealing someone's picture, because there's a fine line between being candid and sort of interfere or getting in the way. That's their private life. So that's a kind of a weird thing, a space to be. Whereas I find reflections are okay, because reflections of people seem to take them away from the situation. So yeah, anyway, sorry, I'm waffling about my what I go on about. But pre-Raphaelite, and all that malarkey, give me that all day long. So that's where I'm heading. I'm doing a series at the moment with Gabby, where I just have her sat on an incredibly large stool, and sometimes we did the shoot where I took her out into the field, up the step ladder, dressed as an angel. So she's nude, but she's got the angel's wings on, and I shot that with using my iPhone again for metering. I've got the 2.8 bull lens on it, wide open SLR, bright sunshine of the day. And so how are you going to take a picture? And then you suddenly start to put Waterhouse stops on things, which I know they should be in the middle of the lens and not at the end, but it works, it just works. Make the hole smaller, you can still take a picture. So for me, it's all about bodging it. If you can bodge it and you get your shot, then it doesn't really matter, So that's kind of where I go at the moment. So I've got loads of ideas, loads of things I want to do. It's just finding the time really to do it all really, without driving yourself mad. But yes, anyway. Next, where am I going next? I don't know.
Well, I'm just thinking that there, again, as before, there were just so many areas that I'd like to take the conversation in, but I also know that we're pretty much coming to the end of the time that we have available to us today. But that just makes me even more excited about the prospect of one day going down with Andrew and spending a day with you, because it's just going to be pretty mind-blowing, I'm sure.
Yes, you must come.
Yeah. So I think we need to do, before we start to wrap up, we need to do that email that we had, that we've been teasing, that we need to do this, because we now know the correct pronunciation of the word TOYO. And Andrew, perhaps you might want to go into a bit more detail on that.
Yeah. So it turns out I was right all along.
Yeah.
I think so. Despite being challenged by, Simon claims he didn't challenge me, and maybe I challenged him. I don't know, whichever way it was. But the fact remains, I'm right. So as ever. Now I do apologise because I can't actually remember who recorded this. Who? Simon, tell me who recorded this. What I'm about to play.
Is it not on the email that I just sent you?
Yeah, I know, but I can't look at it because I've got it all queued up on my iPhone, ready to play.
Oh, okay. Well, let me just dig it out. I know it's I think Tom DeCorsia. Is that the correct pronunciation?
Oh, that could be. Yeah. Well, while you're looking at that, I'm going to play it. I've got the volume whacked up to the top, and I'm going to hold it right up to the microphone, and just tell me if you can hear this.
Toyo.
Perfect.
We heard that perfectly, and there is no doubt on how to say that word from this point onwards.
Toyo. Yeah, I don't need to sell my camera after all now.
No, you can keep it. Yeah. And that was Tom DeCorsia's or DeCorsia. I don't know, one or the other. That's his Japanese wife.
That's it. Yeah. Well done, Tom. Thanks for that.
Yeah, and in particular, well done to Tom's wife.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's excellent. So we all.
So you can forget yo-yos and toyos and.
Yeah, it's not toyo anymore. I'm going to still call it that.
Yeah.
Because that's what I do. Even if I mispronounce something, I usually mispronounce it forever. So there we go. We'll cope. Right, Dave. It's been a pleasure. We knew it was going to be good, and it was good. And perhaps you could let people know how they can see your work and the things that you do. I don't. Thank you, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure for me as well. During this lockdown, I've been listening to your stuff, and it's makes me laugh and it inspires me. So that's good. I don't do much. I don't exhibit anymore. I don't do much stuff. So really, it's Instagram, if you want to follow me, which is Dave Shrimpton, or my website, which is daveshrimpton.co.uk, which is kind of out of date, but I try and keep up to date with it. But those are the best two places to see me really at the moment. Yeah. So Instagram is probably the best place. And you mentioned it extremely briefly. But I think it's worth just coming back to this point, and that's that you do photography workshops at your place, don't you?
I do large form photography workshops where people get to use everything: the Aero Ectars, the Bull lenses, the SLR cameras, the big Mahogany one as well. So I do those, and then it's a full day, and they get to learn, try everything. Don't make the mistakes I made by trying them first, and then. All the way through to taking the shots, metering, and developing the film at the end of the day as well. So, I do that, and also do wet plate collodion one day courses as well, where people come in and to be honest, that really is my happy space. As you know, I love to talk about cameras and photography, and I just love setting other people off on that journey that I love. And I've watched people like Hilary Clark came and did one of mine, and her work's wonderful anyway, but she inspires me. Craig, Neil, if you're out there, they've both done it with me, and I love it. So when this is all over, if anyone wants to make contact with me and come and do one, it's what I enjoy doing. So come and enjoy the lane.
And certainly, I've seen the feedback that Hillary's given, and Ian Fleming as well.
Ian, of course, yes, Ian was brilliant. Ian had a great time. He was the first time we shot down the lane. Yeah. He drove. I think he drove all the way. Yeah. So,
okay, good.
A long way, but not that train. No. I know the one you're talking about. Yes.
Yeah, that's actually from a different podcast. But so people are going to be scratching their heads. What are they about with Ian's train? Well, you'll have to listen to 100 odd episodes of the Classic Lenses podcast to work that one out.
You will.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm really looking forward to finally coming down and doing something there with you. Right then, Andrew, have you got any shout outs or any other quick things you want to get off your chest before we disappear?
How about that?
Yeah, that's nice. Nice.
I haven't, but actually, if I can just say very quickly, in terms of timescales to when we might be out of this madness and be able to do things like workshops, I would think once you're allowed to go back to the barbers or the hairdressers, surely things like going to see Dave would be on. Even if we have to wear masks, we could make some masks with like skulls on them and do some creepy photo shoots down the down the lane, couldn't we?
I've got it all waiting for you.
I mean, I think that's a good point actually, because at some point we've got to go back. I mean, we don't know how long it's going to take for a vaccine to come out. We don't even know if a vaccine's ever going to come out.
No.
So at some point we're going to have to learn to live with this. I mean, this is something that as everybody knows, the Six Towns Darkroom in Stoke-on-Trent hasn't been running now for probably about 3 months, but we've just done our third virtual meeting, because we're still trying to meet once a month on a Tuesday night, and Fraser Yule joined us again last week, the one that we just had yesterday. Where we just talk the usual nonsense that we do when we're not actually developing anything. But that was one of the things. It was a topic, of what do we do, how do we go back, and I think the general consensus in our group, as you just said there, is I think when certainly in the UK at least, or in England to be more specific, when they perhaps start to allow the social elements to start to happen again, that's probably the time that something could happen, but it will be different, and it's almost certainly going to be wearing face masks and gloves, and probably not having cups of tea together like we used to do, and sharing biscuits. Bad news.
We're hopeful that I know there's been some lobbying by the Caravan Club and the Camping Caravan Club that people with self-contained units, with your own toilet and wash facilities, there's no reason really why, I don't talk to people anyway, so I'm quite happy just being in the caravan. I don't need to go to someone else's shower or toilet. You think maybe that would be, I'm hoping that we can get away, by the end of the year in some form, but we won't be going far, because it's just not fair on folk around the world if you pitch up on their doorstep, is it? And then, so we'll just go down the road and do some canoeing and take the caravan to the, a few miles down the road, if we can at some point.
I've just made a portable darkroom to go on the back of the camper van as well.
Yeah.
So,
you're in the same boat, aren't you? You did get away, didn't you, just before the lockdown?
Yeah, I got away the week before and took the pinhole camera. Yeah, we were very lucky. Very, very lucky.
Did you go up to the northeast? Was it up to the northeast somewhere?
Up to just on the. It wasn't Cromer, but it was that kind of over that way.
That's not the northeast.
Not Burwash, is it Burwash? I can't remember now. Anyway, over that way.
That's not the northeast. The northeast is. I'm talking about Geordie land. You went up to the Norfolk.
Oh God, no! I went to Norfolk. That's as far as I go. Yeah. Although that's the next thing I want to do. I want to do the 500-mile trip round Scotland with the camper van.
Yeah, you
And,
can do
and a
that.
wet
You can
plate
do that
gradient.
with a camper van, but not a caravan apparently, because it's too. There are some areas that you wouldn't want to take a caravan.
Yeah, that'd be fun. But, yeah.
What's your portable darkroom? I know we're supposed to be wrapping the show up. But
Well,
what's the
yeah,
portable darkroom?
it's made out of a B&Q dump bin, plastic dump bin on wheels. I've cut some armholes in it and made a periscope on the top. And it's got a ruby lith at the front, and you can drop trays in it, and it goes on the back of the camper van. And you can develop wet plate out out there. Or I've got the Canadian ice fishing tent as well, so that works really well as well. So yeah,
have you got one? Did you see that tent? If you go on to Bora Roots YouTube top shit thing, he's got that big darkroom tent, hasn't he? That he takes out into the woods with him.
Is he? Yeah, the Eskimo one's the one I use, the big red one. He just
that's what he's got.
pops up. Yeah, they work really well.
Could be the same. I've got a lab box. I'm thinking of taking that away in the caravan.
There you go.
You'll struggle getting inside that, though, won't you, Andrew?
Pardon?
You'll struggle getting inside a lab box.
No, I don't need to. It's a daylight developing tank.
Yeah,
but not for 4x5, of course, but for 35 and 120. Yeah. At the moment,
by the way,
microphone's sitting on it.
The other thing is when I do the workshops, I only ever have 2 people. So that should limit numbers and spreading of viruses.
I would have thought once the social, as Simon says, once the government is indicating the social side of things can be relaxed.
Common
with
sense
2 people, common sense would take in. If you can't social distancing, we're probably still going to have to maintain. Yeah. If not, wear your mask, don't you? But
wear a mask, common sense.
What you can do, you could do your workshops with a bit of common sense applied, couldn't you?
I think so. So there is light at the end of the tunnel, so they say.
Yes. Okay. Well, in that case, Andrew, where can people find you outside of this podcast?
Outside of this podcast, across most social media, Twitter, Instagram as Warboys Snapper, and if you just want to look at Instagram of pinhole work, it's Warboys Snapper _pinholes. Other than that, you'll find me on the Facebook group, the Large Format Photography Facebook group. You'll find me hanging around the Lensless Podcast Facebook group, and every 2 weeks in the Lensless Podcast. But we didn't have one last week because we had some technical issues. More technical issues.
Yeah. And I just remembered we didn't do it last week, and I'm not sure if we did the week before, but we need to say thank you to those people who donated. Well, they've actually managed to find us on coffee.com.
I couldn't find us.
No, it's notoriously difficult, I've got to say. But and I'm not sure. We got one from Wayne Setzer? Did I mention that last time? I can't remember.
No,
I'll say it anyway. So I figured any podcast that would have me on as a guest twice needs all the help it can get. I'll take the blame for the first time, but the second time is on you. Keep up the good work, guys. Thank you, Wayne. Christopher J. May, been a while since my last contribution. Sorry, guys. He's always apologising for donating to us.
Giving us money.
It's great if you can, and if you can't, it doesn't matter. So thank you very much, Christopher. And this is hope you're doing hope you're doing as well as possible in these strange times. Take care. Dave Walker, also known as Dave the Walker on Instagram. He goes, I found it. So well done. Here, have the money that the Sunny 16 podcast told me they didn't want anymore. So thank you very much, Dave. Gratefully received. Mike Rattle, if that's Rattel, I'm not quite sure is the correct pronunciation there.
I'm not sure how to pronounce his surname. Rattle. Anyway,
Rattel.
Tell us how to pronounce your surname. He speaks to me a lot on Messenger, but you need to tell us how to pronounce it.
That's it. So that's Ratel.
Yeah.
And it says there, thanks. Sorry, didn't say thanks. It says, Simon and Andrew, thanks so much for doing the show. Well, thank you, Mike.
He just bought an enlarger to get into that. I think he must live in a fairly limited. He hasn't got a lot of space. I think he's got a landlord, maybe an apartment or something. And he bought for $50 a Cambo. I think it's a Cambo monorail, which was very nice. It looks very nice. And he was chatting with me over lenses, and he ended up buying a 150 Schneider, or 150 or 210. I can't remember what he bought now, but he's got the bug big time.
Good. It's good.
And then on the 27th of May, again, Christopher J. May made a donation to us. No message this time, no apologies this time. So but thank you again, Christopher. And then finally, on the 7th of May, from I'll name this person shortly. Keep up the good work, guys, and keeping me sane with lockdown listening. Mr. Dave Shrimpton, thank you very much.
You're welcome. I thought it was a time I finally put my hand in my pocket, but there you go. No, it's been an absolute pleasure, guys. It's a bit strange today. It's like I'm listening to a podcast sat at home, but I'm kind of joining in. It's very peculiar, but most enjoyable. fully
interactive, and I just wish to say you don't have to donate to get on the show.
No.
It's a sheer coincidence. But there you are.
Well, we've been planning it for a long time, haven't we? So
we have. We needed to do it, and we've done it. Well, we've done part one at least anyway.
Yeah.
Part two to follow.
That's it. So again, thank you again, Dave. It's been great having you on. And from me, let's wind this up now. You can find me on Twitter as Simon Four. I'm on Instagram as Simon Forster Photographic. I have a website and an eBay shop. If you do look up Simon yes, simonforsterphotographic.co.uk, and if you can find my eBay shop, I sell an increasing range of lens caps, but none of them for large format lenses, so I guess you don't really care. So that's that. Our music, our wonderful music, is by Kevin MacLeod, and it's called Two Finger Johnny, and that's it. So I hope you've enjoyed this 3 weeks show, or whatever it is, and fingers crossed we'll be back more timely next time. In fact, we may have almost got our next guest lined up already. So technical problems aside, which is actually the reason why we didn't get a show out last week, we may be getting closer to resolving those technical problems. So we'll have the guest that we were hoping to do last week soon. So that's it. So I hope you enjoyed it, and listen again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Pardon? Did you say goodbye there, David?
Yes, goodbye. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Excellent.